Hello, friends, relatives, acquaintances, exes, sworn enemies, and/or total strangers alike. My name is Ethan, and you're watching Plan B, a series that my therapist told me might be a healthier outlet than screaming at people on the street. When you last saw me, I was in the middle of a 4-month-long personal hell brought on by a somewhat common medical condition that Boston doctors really suck at diagnosing. Thankfully, at the beginning of April, I got surgery to fix it, and since then, I've been recovering well. I got this really cool scar for free, too. Today, in the interest of helping other singers with my condition feel a little bit less alone, I wanted to talk about my recovery and what it's meant for my music. So for the first time since December, let's roll that intro. That's so weird. That almost sounds like a song I might have heard somewhere recently. Anyway, when you last saw me, I was awaiting serious surgical treatment for what is known as a thyroglossal duct cyst. Really fun name, I know. Just a little bit of recap for you from the last episode. So, in normal development, our thyroid glands form in the womb through the help of a cord of tissue called the thyroglossal duct. Usually afterward, this tissue wastes away before birth, but about 7% of people are thought to be born with it still intact. This can develop into what is known as a thyroglossal duct cyst, most commonly located in the area right above your Adam's apple. This cyst can easily become infected from a normal cold, and once an infection starts, it often becomes serious quickly. Without fairly urgent treatment, your neck can swell up to the point where breathing and swallowing become rather difficult. Antibiotics are often only a temporary solution. The infections are thought to nearly always return at some point after you stop the drugs. The only lasting treatment that works for most is a surgical operation known as the cyst trunk procedure. It's been done in nearly the same way for over 100 years now, and it's pretty brutal, requiring the removal of a portion of your hyoid bone to prevent recurrence. Nobody could guarantee that my singing voice would be okay after this, which I absolutely hated, but I had few other options unless I wanted to spend the rest of my life looking like I was growing a second neck. I am happy to say, though, that it worked out pretty well for me. Most of the pain, while initially terrible, was gone after a week. My speaking voice was back to normal within 3 days, and a month out, I'm already back to hard exercise without any issue. Best of all, I've been infection-free this entire time. Knock on wood. I finally have my life back, and for this, I have to sincerely thank the entire surgical team at Mass Eye and Ear, as well as the many friends who helped me recover from this. I owe you all a debt I cannot possibly repay. Now, you may have noticed that I have not yet talked about singing. Oh boy. You see, I called myself unlucky for having my condition in the last video, but I truly did not understand until my surgery just how unlucky I had been for my entire life. Now, for those of you watching who don't know me, and thank you both so much for tuning in, I'm a musician and composer whose primary instrument is voice. Singing is first and foremost how I connect with music. I've been doing it for over 12 years, seriously. Now, over the course of those 12 years, I've starred in musicals and operettas, sung with multiple ensembles all over the US and in 17 other countries at last count, and released multiple recordings of me singing solo. With all this in mind, maybe this will come as a surprise to some, but I've never felt like a very good singer. No, I mean it. This is not just imposter syndrome. While I do know some advanced vocal techniques, I have a pretty wide vocal range and have a lot of agility, there is another sort of fundamental aspect of singing you might have heard of called staying in tune. No one cares if you can riff if you're singing sour notes. And for the amount of my life that I've invested in singing, I have more inconsistent intonation than just about anyone else with similar experience that I know. For the past decade or so, I've woken up 1 or 2 days a month in great voice. I'll warm up, snap right into pitch, and feel like I'm on top of the world. All the other days, though, forget about it. Above a certain note or volume level, I'm flat, 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 in a way that I can't really hear myself unless I record it and play it back. And despite sinking years of my life into fixing this, I've really never gotten better at it. I'll think I have it figured out one day, and then the next I'll wake up and be right back to normal, which is to say, out of tune. It is truly hard to put into words how miserable this makes music performance and production for me, things I otherwise love. My most recent song, Don't Feel Like Dancing, which came out in February, did have a lot of vocal tracks on it, but it required 700 takes in front of the microphone to put it all together. And I'm really not that much of a perfectionist in the studio. I just kept not sounding good, and by the time I did have enough good takes, I'd sunk entire days into recording this song. I should note, this is not how practicing on other instruments generally goes for me. If I work on a piano, piano or guitar piece, pretty much no matter what, I eventually get better. But there's certain pieces that should be right in my vocal wheelhouse that I have never been able to sound good on, no matter how much I might work at them. It all makes me feel like I'm losing my mind. I've spent so much time wondering, is my problem mental? Is it physical? Is it some combination of the two? It just doesn't make sense. Or at least, it didn't make sense until my surgery. I woke up the morning after my procedure and on a whim just decided to open my mouth and sing in falsetto. A very high note emerged from my mouth that I'd never ever been able to sing before. At that very moment, I realized that for the first time in 12 years, something fundamental about my voice had changed. And probably for the better. And after I read my surgeon's detailed operation notes a week later, I found out exactly what had been wrong with me. For background, 2 years ago, I went to a speech-language pathologist to try and fix my stubborn intonation issues. She diagnosed me with muscle tension dysphonia, which in this case meant that the muscles at the front of my neck were extremely tight and that this was impacting my singing. She particularly noted that my thyrohyoid space, that's the space between your hyoid bone and your thyroid cartilage right here, was extremely small, about as small as she'd ever seen it in anyone before. We tried stretching everything out, but I ultimately left therapy with less progress than frustration. Now, fast forward to the present day. Do you want to guess where my thyroglossal duct cyst was found during surgery? You got it. It was on the right-hand side of my thyrohyoid space, physically clamping my hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage together. It was also tethered to the so-called infrahyoid strap muscles in that area. For all we know, until April, things had been this way for my entire life. This means I might have very well learned to sing and to speak with uncontrollable asymmetric muscle tension in my neck. It seems likely that I learned to support my voice by tensing up every other muscle to match things on the right-hand side here. Now, this is an amazing realization for me. At long last, I have some catharsis that this wasn't just all in my head. I actually was born physically disadvantaged as a singer. But while recognizing a problem is great, it's not the same as fixing that problem. Because I'm sorry to say that even if the cause of my muscle tension is gone, the tension itself still remains. And that really catches us up to today. In the intervening weeks since my surgery, I've made rehab my full-time job, knowing that this is maybe the best opportunity I've ever had to improve the fundamentals of my singing voice. And some days I'm finding relief that I've never ever seen before. But old muscle habits die hard, and these are so ingrained that I've more often driven myself nuts trying to work them out. So I've been working with therapists, vocal coaches, and ENTs alike to find some ways to rid myself of this tension, with some success so far. For a while, I wanted to hold off on making this video until I knew that I had moved past my issues and was finally getting better as a singer. I wanted to emerge triumphant from my long, dark night of the soul here as a new and improved musician with more self-confidence than ever before. But these sorts of simple narratives are called narratives for a reason. Real life usually isn't so simple and uncluttered, and this is especially the case for my rare condition. Today, I can look you in the eye and tell you that although I'm working to get better, I don't really know where things go from here. But that's life, that's okay, and in the meantime, I owe it to myself to try my hardest at improving. I may be risk averse, but if any risk is worth taking, it's this one. No matter what happens, I can tell you that Plan B will return soon, and I'll be sure to keep you updated with how my recovery continues. Until then, please consider following or subscribing to this channel if you like this video. Stay healthy, and see you next time.